listening to the Poster Boy Podcast. Our mission is to help young entrepreneurs in small town America start, grow, and manage 21st century businesses. Are you ready? Let's get started.
All right, this is Chad.
Hey, and this is Drew. Today we're going to talk about another quote. Chad, what's the quote we're going to talk about?
Awesome, Drew. So today's quote is, "It's hard to beat a person who never gives up," said by the famous Babe Ruth.
You know, I like that we started with Babe Ruth today. I think it speaks to what your business is, and as people will find out, what's motivated you in the past. Can you tell me what's the context, or what's the story, or what's the lesson today that we want people to take away with when they think about what it takes to be a person that's hard to beat?
I think the one thing that you want to really take from this is something that we always talk about, Drew, is it's what it takes to push past the difficult parts, the inevitable adversity that you're going to find.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Totally lost my Like, you answered my question like a dog running after a car. So we're golden. I've become a podcast editing pro so far.
I know, we haven't even published a single one.
Because they're going to be perfect, Chad, and I won't settle for second best.
Perfectionists. That's right. We're perfectionists.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, your first story is, about your dad telling you it was time to give up on your pipe dream. And I'm curious, I'm sure there was an emotion that happened when you felt that. What's the story behind that?
Well, when I first started out in business, I was really young. I was in college, and I honestly, I didn't really know what I was doing. I had no idea, and I made so many mistakes. And I think one of the problems in the beginning was I just wasn't learning from my mistakes. I tended to make them just over and over again, and then you want to share what you're doing with everyone around you. And so my parents were no exception. So my dad and I, we'd had so many conversations about everything, and you want to share like your progress and all those things. But he also knew that I wasn't making a lot of progress, and, they would want me to come home, and I didn't even have the money for gas to get down there and things like that. There's just always a lot of headaches, but, unfortunately they weren't in a position where they could help me financially either. And so I was dating a girl at the time, and I found out I had a kid on the way. So obviously it was a nerve-wracking time. I have no insurance, no retirement, no nothing. I quit college with one semester left, had all these things that from a parent's perspective were not going according to plan. So when my parents asked me to come down to Missouri for the weekend, I went home, and my dad and my stepmom, they set me down, and, they said, it's time that I give up this pipe dream of being an entrepreneur. And I realize now, and realize that I have, responsibilities that are coming. And when you have a kid, you're going to have to take care of things. You're going to have insurance, you're going to have all this other stuff. And I can't even afford gas to get home. And at the time I was living in my girlfriend's parents' house, and it was a really bad spot, but I just refused to give up. And, when he gave me that advice, it worked out really well, because in the end, when it first happened, I was so angry, because you already feel defeated because you're not succeeding. There's so many emotions that you go through when you're just failing daily. And, you might have $80 in your checking account, and you're trying to decide, like, what do you spend that money on, right? You need paper for your little printer, but then you need gas to get to the event. And there's so many ups and downs, and I couldn't get a credit card. Just everything bad was going on, and then in the end, and one thing I want to remind here, to you and Drew, I've said this, is that parents never deliberately give bad advice. They give advice based on their life knowledge and input or whatever, which is fine. And my parents were no different. But then, today, obviously what happened at the end was I moved on, and I told them, like, if you don't believe in what I'm doing, then don't ask me about it. But I refused to give up. Like, under any circumstance ever, I really believed in what I was doing. And I think the crazy thing was, it was probably the first thing I ever really believed in my whole life. And so that made a difference. And so then I had to decide, like, how do I fix this disaster that I've created? Even though it was technically a business, it was really a disaster. Mm-hmm. And so this is when I came up with the yellow legal pad approach. And my plan was relatively simple. I would list out all the problems that I had, and then I would just write out an ideal solution, like whatever the perfect solution would be on the next page for each problem. So let's say I have a page and I list out, whatever, 5 problems. And then on the next page, I would list the first problem. Then I would list out what was my ideal solution. And then I would list out what was it that I had to do to get that. So, like it may be something as simple as when we first started, we were shipping stuff and things weren't getting delivered on time. Right. So we would have so many issues because we couldn't even afford to use UPS. Okay. I mean, we had to use stamps, literally like physical stamps on these tubes that we put these. I know it was a disaster. But and when we work with the post office, we call it to this day snail mail. Right. So if you like when we were doing this, we had a lot of things not being delivered like constantly. And so we would get all these phone calls and my phone would ring to the point that every time my phone rang and I answered it, like someone thought I was a scam. It was unbelievable how many posters that we sold and people thought we were a scam. It was just mind blowing. And, all because they didn't get it, but then I was really young. I was really, really young. And then people would call me and I'm like, yeah, you'll get it. You'll get it tomorrow for sure. I didn't even have tracking on this thing. I would just say it so they would shut up and it would move me to my next call. But yeah, I know. So, but the way we solved it, right? So the ideal solution when we were writing it down would be, man, if we just didn't have to use the post office and we could save some money on it, right? So if we could just guarantee that something was going to be delivered. So that was like what the ideal solution is that when we ship something, we just know exactly when and we can almost guarantee it's going to be done. Most logical people that have any knowledge of anything in the world today, they would go, oh, we'll just change to UPS, right? Because it's or FedEx or whatever. But what we decided to do was bring on one of our friends. We were all servers at a restaurant when I first started. And we decided to bring on one of our friends, and we tell him, dude, we here's our problem. Like people are calling nonstop, and we need to start getting these things out faster. And so we had him. This is, by the way, this is before the iPhone. Okay, so this is like the Garmin had just come out, maybe the Garmin, and. So we had this mapping software, I think it was like MapQuest or something at the time, where we did it on a computer and we would have to put all of these addresses in and then print out where they were on a map and then and lay them out so we could figure out what was in a route or, whatever would be like closest to each other. And then from there, my friend would build out this like from where he started to this address. And then he would go from this address to this address and we would print all of these directions. Okay. And then he would leave our house at 10 p.m. because, we live in Chicago, so traffic's awful. So he'd leave our house at 10 p.m. and he would go and deliver these posters till like 4 a.m. And we do this every day. So then whenever someone would call us, like on a Tuesday, I'm like, hey, it'll be delivered. You'll have it by the morning, no question. And then we would just print that thing, get it ready for our friend, and he would do it. And, again, this just goes back to the Yellow Legal Pad approach. We did this for everything. And, our goal was to solve one problem at a time, to start minimizing the phone calls and start being more efficient. And it took a long time. And some of the solutions, the ideal solutions, were really expensive that we, I'm sure you can imagine we really didn't get to right away, but we had what we thought was an ideal solution. And there were sometimes short-term ones that we could come up with, and you just get creative. And then, you do that for 6 months. And, my daughter was going to be born. I think by the time I told my parents, it was going to be born in like 6 months or something. And, by the time she was born, we had really turned a corner just by writing down all these problems every week. Anytime we had a new problem, we just wrote it down and went back and solved it.
So tying this back to the quote, never giving up, what was it that drove you to never give up? Was it because someone told you to give up? Was it because adversity got harder and you like challenges? Or was there still a level of just being hard-headed and saying, I'm going to push through my dreams no matter what?
I wish that's what it was at the beginning. I don't really think that's what it was. Unfortunately, I think it was just the fact that I didn't really know any better, and I didn't know what else. I'd never really thought of anything else that I could do that I just really loved. There's just nothing that I just ever like. I always, this is like saying I set my soul on fire. Kind of the best way I can explain it. And when you find something that does that, you're really willing to do anything. And for me, I think when your parents sit you down, I mean, it's one thing if your friends think you're destined to fail. When your parents think you're destined to fail, it's like, dang, it sucks. Yeah. And I don't know, but I think once I started, and you know how you develop over time, and you get smarter, and you get a lot of things, and so I think it just like giving up for me was just never an option. I just don't think it's an option, ever in any situation that I do. I mean, yeah, sometimes it's important to fold your hand, but for me, the only way I would ever give up is if I exhausted every single possible option that I could ever imagine thinking of. Maybe, but even in those circumstances, if I believe in it enough, I don't know. Giving up just wasn't just for me. It's just not an answer.
I like that.
I don't know if that answers your question.
It does, and it's inspiring. So tell me, how do we make this into an actual step-by-step approach? What are some action items that you might ask eager listeners to take?
Well, I think everyone at any age, really, they have something that they love to do, right? Maybe not like the love that I have for business today, but I definitely, as a kid, I love soccer, and a lot of kids play sports. Some of my daughter's friends today, I have a young daughter, and some of her friends are like super active readers, right? A lot of them want to be in musicals or little, screenplays and things like that. But I would say that, whatever you're involved in, it doesn't really matter. Once you decide that you're never giving up and you're never quitting, well, then the only other alternative is to get better. Okay. And so when you commit to that, so, and I'll use the example of baseball, right? Let's just say that we're a shortstop. And once we've decided that we're never giving up on this, like our ultimate goal, obviously, for most athletes, and I see it today more than ever, is to be a professional athlete. But I think if nothing else, if your goal is to at least get to college and maybe help compensate your way through school or whatever you choose to do next, maybe some minor league ball. But if your goal is that you can commit to improving every single day. So let's say that you take ground balls, every day you might have practice, but then after practice, you stay for an hour every day and you only focus on one specific thing every day for, 30 days, 90 days, depending on the difficulty of the task. But if you worked on that for 30 days, right, and you took ground balls every single day for an extra hour, and you set up a little iPhone or your little cell phone off to the side on a little stand, and you record yourself fielding these ground balls. And then when you get home at nighttime, after you do your homework and you eat and you shower and you do all those things, you sit down, maybe with your dad or maybe with someone or maybe by yourself, I don't really know. And then you watch these videos and you critique yourself and you see like, where could I get better? And then the next day you want to try and be better. And it's the same approach as the old legal pad. You're really listing all the things that you can improve. Maybe you don't keep your head down. Maybe if you get a bad hop, or maybe anytime the ball's coming, right off the grass, you're lifting your eyes up or something. You can start finding little things and these little bitty improvements. If you make little, 1% improvements every day for 30 days, you start seeing a major difference. And this could be done in anything, and Drew, you and I have been in the serving world, and I think there's, if you decide to be a great server, you can decide to keep your floor clean, or what we've talked about before, doing riddles at tables. And
what you shared with me before, I thought that was honestly a little jealous that I didn't think of something as smart as that to engage a table. But when it came, so I waited tables for I think it was about 5 or 6 years, and there's obviously a moment where you're thinking to yourself as a server, man, is this all I'm going to do for the rest of my life? And I realized that if it's not what you're going to get from it is not what it will be for you in 30 years, but what lessons can you take away from it that will last a lifetime? And I learned to be courteous, to be kind, to be respectful, to watch the subtleties of someone. And most importantly, I learned how to sell. I learned how to upsell, cross-sell, really engage a table, almost as a showman. And it really came across over time, not only gaining rapport with management, but also having repeat customers, people who would walk in the front door and ask for me sometimes two or three times the same weekend. Because I realized that if I'm going to do this, I might as well be the best at it. And between the various restaurants I went to, it didn't take long for me to realize that, going the next level and not giving up, not settling with only making, $100 a night at a restaurant. I wasn't willing to give up because that's my livelihood. And in business, I would imagine it's the same, right? If you don't push your organization to excel, if you don't push your company to continue to grow, then you'll never reach that apex of being able to sit back and watch something that you've built.
Well, yeah, and when you talk about like being a person that never gives up, I think in the beginning, the person that you're competing against is yourself. In the very, very beginning, you're really just, you're trying to create the habit of never giving up, right? But then as you get bigger in business and as you start bringing on more things, anything that you do well, people tend to follow quickly. It's amazing how the world can just see it. It's kind of unbelievable. And, so then that same type of mentality that we have today is we have obviously the mentality of never giving up, but more importantly, we try to address things first, right? So with our business, we're continuously evaluating not only ourselves, but any competitors that we run across and asking ourselves, how can we be better? How can we be more efficient? How can we bring more to the table? And how can we do it, for a reasonable price? That way we're able to take care, everyone wins. And so, you continuously look for these things. And that's the same thing as never giving up. I mean, I can tell you this, the last customer, the last company you ever want to compete with is one that does not give up. Because if you're trying your best and they're constantly, and they're scrappy, and they are diligent in with their finances and they're able to stick around, it's a nightmare to deal with those things. And so you are always fighting, and we've just wanted to be the company that we never give up. We provide the greatest product. I think that the ultimate compliment is let's just say anything that we're looking to do, right? If we're looking to start a restaurant, you and I would put together all of the things that we've enjoyed, all the things we didn't like. We'd try to avoid those things and we'd build it. And I think for us, the ultimate compliment is if someone's coming in to compete with us, they go, man, like it's really hard to do better. I mean, we could duplicate them, but doing better is really difficult because, we take a picture, we have it graphically designed, we print it and we frame it and we do it in 10 minutes. Whereas before I came into the market, those things would take 4 to 6 weeks and they wouldn't come framed. And so for someone, here's the thing, there's really no value in doing it faster than us because whether you do it in 5 minutes or 10 minutes, it doesn't make a difference. That's not enough speed to where it will determine whether one's better or another.
I see exactly
right?
what you're
I'm
saying.
saying.
I think when it comes down to never giving up, it's an internal charge. I don't know if it's something that you can scream at someone and they get it, or if it's something that there's almost a light clicks in their head and they realize that they just have to push through, right? It's almost like you're never going to get where you want to go if you don't just pick up what you're doing and start running as fast as you can. And you're gonna hit roadblocks. You're gonna stumble. You may zigzag down the wrong paths, but you just can't give up.
I've heard this from so many successful people over the years. And one advice they've always given me, it's like continuous from everyone that I've ever met that was, and I say successful, I mean really successful, was the fact that very, very few people, or most people give up right when they're on the cutting edge of making it. Right? Like they're right there and they just can't see it because they're like in the trenches and they don't realize they were right there.
If people walk away from this podcast knowing that people give up before they should have because they were so close, I want people to take away that maybe right now, if they're struggling and they're not giving up and they're thinking about giving up, maybe they're so close to it. They should just try one more month, one more quarter, one more year, invest a little bit more energy and they're almost there. It's almost like a surprise because you don't know that you're going to be successful until, I don't know, maybe you look backwards and you see you are, right? But I think the moral or the nugget of gold from that is next week could be that week where you make the breakthrough and you need to recognize that to not give up right now.
Well, and Drew, one thing I want to add to that, okay, as far as the gold is, if you're thinking about giving up and you're listening to us and you decide to give it 30 more days and you write down you take this legal pad and you write down your problems, write down like the biggest 2 or 3 that you have. And just think about if you were to solve this particular problem, what would it do for you moving forward, right? And if you figure out that you can solve 2 or 3 problems that are really big, by being creative, being clever, and, by taking the time to think about your problems takes you out of the trenches and takes you into the mind mapping and, the action portion of everything. But if they could do this for 30 days and just solve 1 or 2 big problems, it creates momentum. And so that's all really anyone ever looks for. I don't know if you're familiar with, I want to say, and please don't quote me on this, but I want to say it was like Tony Robbins that said, happiness doesn't come from results. Happiness comes from progress. Like when you start going to the gym, most people, they don't realize this. Like when you go to the gym and you work out for like, let's say a week straight every day, you already feel great. It's not about getting to the final destination. It's just about making progress. And so what we want, and for everyone listening, we want you to know that the key to all of this is to make continuous progress and to have some form of a habit, which, for us is the legal pad. Just make a habit of writing down your problems. Keep them, on New Year's, pull them all out and look at all the problems that you solved as a fun New Year's Eve thing, and then what you want to do is over the next couple of years, you want your problems to become higher quality, because remember, you can tell a lot about a business by the quality of their problems. And so, Andrew, I know we were going to, get into next week. And so you'd asked me. And so, next week, we're going to really take on the quote that we'll be discussing is actually by Thomas Edison. And it said, there's no substitute for hard work. And so next week, we will be discussing the true value of hard work and what it really means.
This has been another episode of the Poster Boy Podcast, brought to you by utproducts.com. Find and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Visit us at theposterboybook.com to grab your copy of the book.